everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the Towards Health podcast by H1. I'm your guest host, Jared Taylor, and today I'm joined with Anatoly Geyfman, the VP of Medical Devices at H1. How are you today?
I'm very good. Nice to meet you, Jared, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
I'm super excited to have you here. I think we should just dive into it. We usually keep these short and sweet, but informative for our audience. Would love if you would love if you could start, Anatoly, by telling our audience a little bit about your background. Tell us about yourself too, like also what you like to do outside of work. I know they'll love hearing that, but your background, and then we'll talk about H1 more.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Anatoly, and I joined H1 in July last year. Prior to that, I was the CEO and co-founder of a company called Carevoyance. So what we did at Carevoyance is we worked with life sciences companies, much like H1 does. We worked with primarily medical technology companies, those that produce medical devices or biologicals or diagnostics. And we worked mostly with commercial teams, so marketing and sales strategy, those types of teams. And So the way that I got into that is before Carevoyance, I'm an engineer by training, and before Carevoyance, I was a chief architect of a company called Ambra Health, and there what we did is we built a medical imaging technology for hospitals to exchange images with patients, but also with referring physicians so they can do diagnostic reads. And as we built that software, I felt the pain as I was helping the commercial team go to market with it. So I felt the pain of identifying the right opportunities. What types of substantive conversations could you have with those folks? And as a category creator, essentially on the market, so what we were building didn't really exist before we started building it. And so as we were building that category, it became really clear that it was very difficult to identify the right physicians and the right administrators at facilities to have these conversations without additional signals that we didn't get from whatever the databases were that we were accessing at the time. So as I sort of started looking around and trying to see what opportunities existed, and that one was like a super clear one. It was at the intersection of a hard problem and a lot of data. And that's like, I love working in that intersection. So yeah. Prior to that, I actually worked with a lot of data before. I've always been working, I mean, since high school, really, with large data sets, especially protected data sets, PI type data sets. So this was kind of a natural evolution.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool that you saw what needs in the market weren't being met, and in regards to, obviously, I see like when you started Carevoyance, um, how can you talk more about, like, I know you mentioned a little bit, but I would be really curious into to seeing what really excited you about that. I know you mentioned a piece of it, but let's dive into it. That fit with H1 that got you like
Sure.
super psyched, like I'm pumped to be working on these problems
Yeah.
with this team.
Yeah, totally. Like, let's trace it back, right? So what excited me about my work at Ambra was there was this crucial use case of a patient that needed to get diagnostic reads on their radiology studies, right? And so, in order for that to be successful and timely, that needed to get automated, needed to software and methods of communication needed to get involved in order to expedite that process. You know, the state of the art really when before we built the software was a patient would take a CD to a different office, right? That's crazy. And so improving that with software, improving that with technology was really exciting to me. What excited me about Carevoyance, the reason that I started it, is because I saw this need, like Ambra, where we were selling this game-changing solution. I wanted to bring more solutions like that to market, but I knew that the market forces were really, it was really tough to bring category creation solutions to the market. And so it was really important for me to build something that that could democratize access to this information to more companies, not just the top 10 in the world, but maybe the bottom 1,000 or 5,000. And our mission at H1 is creating a healthier future, right? And so like that mission very much aligns with what I have been doing with my life for the last 2 decades, really, is creating a better future. And I think the way to do that is through software and through technology. And so I also really like the technical nature of solving this problem at scale. And what I saw at H1 is I saw both a mission-oriented culture, but I also saw that there is a solution at scale that's happening here that was really exciting to me.
So
And I met Ariel and I met the folks at H1, and obviously, like from a cultural fit perspective, it was a really good fit as well. It was a dynamic, fast-moving organization, thoughtful about how they're going to market, how they're going around, how they're talking to their customers, and really what's the vision of where the product and the company was going. And that was really exciting to me.
yeah, once someone meets Ario and the rest of the team, it's tough to not want to join up and work towards, which it definitely seems like a similar to like vision. Like this is a phrase I actually was Anatoly. I was at the health conference in Boston
Hmm.
last fall, and I interviewed the founder of Quantify, which Sondermine acquired, and we had someone from Sondermine there, and then we had the founder of Quantify. And I asked him, why did you like decide to go down this pathway? And he said, when another company shares like a similar vision to you, and you feel like together you can really achieve it and get to where you want to be, you do it. So it's really cool that you're working with the H1 team and you're helping create what was the phrase, creating a healthier
A
future.
healthier future. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely feel like that. And it's been really cool. Like we were a tiny company, we bootstrapped to acquisition. And one of the really exciting things is like how do um, we were growing really fast and at time of acquisition. And so what was really cool is, hey, can we bring to bear like this large organization that H1 is building on this problem? And just like the example that you pointed out, yeah, when you're aligned, like what I thought, we're going to be competing for deals probably for the rest of our lives, right? And so like you start thinking about who else you want to work with, you choose the right partner, and you just you get married and you go to work together. So that's what we're doing.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I'm super excited. And something I'll tell you too. How often this is a silly thing, but I have to say it. How often, like, I love the name Carevoyance, awesome, and like I love H1. I love the branding from both. I love how everything's positioning. That coupled with an amazing team and a really great vision, I'm really excited to see what everyone continues to keep building on the team. I want to make sure I point this out, Anatoly. So I've been told that you're what's called is it techno-optimist, and based on really what you've seen, your background in healthcare, right? Why do you think you consider yourself a techno-optimist?
Well, you know, I've seen, if you study history, you can see how technology has, on average, has only improved lives, right? So, like, of course, you can, point out to the negatives of technology, but, for, uh, uh, I'll give you an example. I just read a great book. It's called Midnight in Chernobyl, right? And it was an hour by hour account of what happened in Chernobyl in 1986. I actually grew up in the Soviet Union. I grew up in Ukraine. I was born in Kiev, and I remember that time. I was there in 1986 when it happened, and um, so that's not a technology. That's not a techno optimist idea, right? Like Chernobyl exploding was not exactly like the highlight of technology, nuclear technology. But on the other hand, we know that nuclear technology brings energy to billions of peoples in the world today. And so for every one of those, we have lots and lots of counter examples. And so I see this in everything that we do, right? Like certainly there's setbacks, and certainly technology is a sword, just like every sword, like every double-edged sword. There's both edges, right? And one of them can cut you as well as you can do damage with the other hand. But I do think that in responsible hands, and certainly with a fair amount of oversight and just like um, good actors, like technology is a great means to the end. I I'll give you another really funny example. Another book that I recently read called Art of Butchery, and it was a story of Joseph Lister, who really kind of brought germ theory into surgery. And at the time, he was one of the only surgeons in his college who had a microscope, and his people were like, his superiors, the folks that were teaching him, were like, "What are you bringing a microscope for?" So like technology brought a significant improvement to the science of surgery, to the art of surgery. It became not an art; it became a science. Like that's the promise of technology that I really love.
Very interesting story that you attached, and one that people aren't going to pull out a similar story to that. Like you have a very unique story, and thank you for sharing, by the way. And obviously, if you have anyone that you still know back there, hopefully everyone's doing okay and during this
Yeah, thank
crazy
you.
time. Um, I want to shift focus a little bit. You recently did an interview, Anatoly, on for Maps, where
Hmm.
you were talking about why it's even more crucial for medical devices to reach underserved populations to achieve better health equity. Can you kind of give us, I guess, either part two or give us for those of us that haven't listened to it yet, just talk more about what you meant by that.
Oh, it's crazy. No, you haven't listened to it. I mean, like, you're missing out.
I
Just
need
kidding.
to now. No, yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, so think of it this way. Um, Medical devices generally have um, smaller clinical trials than pharmaceutical products, right? And for obvious reasons, medical devices have, unlike a pharmaceutical, it's harder to do a double blind. There's like placebo is really hard to do with a medical device. So and then medical devices, especially implantable devices, have a significant roadblock in the sense that a surgeon needs to be trained in order to implant a medical device. Where for a pharmaceutical, the training is significantly less, right? You don't need to train a surgeon to administer a drug. Um, and so the clinical trials become very small. But what are the populations that your medical device treats? So, like the example I brought up was diabetes. Like diabetes affects folks in more urban areas differently than in some than other areas potentially, or let's say socioeconomic status of the person. That's a significant differential. Like, that affects diabetes. Diabetes affects those folks differently. Um, there are some medical devices that populations of women get affected more than men. So that's where understanding how to recruit for these populations becomes really important, right? Is how do you get in touch with urban folks with low incomes that would need access to this technology, to need access to these treatments? And if we don't consider that as to be part of a clinical trial design or even commercial outreach, then they're really not serving the population of patients that we should be in, and the diffusion of that technology isn't going to be as effective as it would be otherwise. And well, I think that's really sort of the um, it's incumbent on every life sciences company to diffuse the innovation to the population. And so the way you start is you make sure that it works for the population. And the way you do that is you make sure that you include those populations in your R&D and your clinical trials, like the whole life cycle of the product.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing more, by the way. I really appreciate it. And happy to put a link to that conversation for everyone to check out the full version of it. So I really appreciate you giving us those highlights. My last question for you, Anatoly, is around access to care. So how does access to care for those needed therapies and bringing those devices to hospitals and physicians who treat underserved populations, how does that play into what you just discussed in regards to access to
Yeah,
care?
yeah, absolutely. So, access to care is multifaceted, right? So, one attribute of access to care um, are there physicians who are aware of the technology at every level of your care. So, in America, we have um, a system where we have primary care physicians that are not necessarily specialists on a lot of conditions, but they're generally knowledgeable about the care for a patient. And it's incumbent on them to understand the factors behind the different conditions that their patients have so they can refer a patient to a specialist if it's medically necessary and if it's important for that patient's healthcare outcomes, right? So but that has to come with education, right? That primary care physician needs to be educated about the condition, needs to be educated about the treatment options in order to be a good referrer to a specialist. Specialists, imagine um, if you trained 30 years ago versus today. So, and in almost any specialty, but 30 years ago, we didn't have surgical robots, and now lots of surgeries are being done by surgical robots. 30 years ago, we didn't have, we only have like very, very, very early, computer imaging. And now we have a lot of computer imaging. Like everything is computer imaging now, right? So, um, awareness and understanding of new technologies as they treat patients in your specialty, like that's very, very important. And that's another part of access, right? Is if you get referred to a physician who's not aware of the most modern treatments for a particular condition, or at least aware of what are the options, you don't have access, right? And then access is of course financial access, right? So someone has to pay for these services, at least in the United States, right? We don't have a national payer per se. We have Medicare, but that's different. And so ensuring access to healthcare to these products and services and these treatments, like um, it really has to be with the payers themselves as well. And so there's a component of education there, and then understanding what are the lives covered by these payers, right? And then we talk about those folks that don't have a lot of access. Also, are the folks that are covered by potentially some of them are covered by Medicaid and other government payers, and it's incumbent on companies in the life sciences space to have those conversations with those payers and to get coverage for those treatments for those patients. And so, yeah, access is a multifaceted problem. It's a challenge for sure for every company, for every life sciences treatment, but it's also an opportunity as well, right? Proper health economics and outcomes research, proving that the product is effective, ensuring that the population of patients that is best suited to the product, that product gets tried on those patients, right? So it's all sort of part of that life cycle.
Well, Anatoly, your passion and knowledge in this space has just shined throughout this whole episode. So I really appreciate you coming on as a guest and sharing your thoughts on everything that you're building at H1 and also your knowledge into the core areas that you are so passionate about. Uh, where, if someone wants to connect with you or learn more about H1, where should they be heading?
Go to our website. If you find me on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn. My name is right there. I'm always eager to talk to other folks in our space, and I'm really eager to talk to entrepreneurs in our space. Being one and having been one, I'm really passionate about innovation. I'm really passionate about bringing new treatments to life and also new products to life. And I'm always trying to help.
Thanks again for being a guest. Wish you all the best of luck and can't wait to have you on again soon, hopefully, Anatoly.
All right, likewise. Great to meet you, and I appreciate the interview. Thank you.